Okay, Roger, all good.
Okay, all good. Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for making yourselves available in this interesting fashion. So again, let's open the May 13th, 2020 Downtown Action Committee hearing. If we could start with a roll call, please.
Roger Jansen,
Present.
Nick Mihelich,
Present.
Brian Shegwis,
Present.
Stephen Graham. Let the record reflect that Stephen Graham is not present. Michael Cuevas,
Present.
David Felton,
Present.
Brad McPherson,
Present.
Johnny Lee Dixon, Gregory Gabriel. Let the record reflect that Gregory Gabriel is not present.
Okay, thanks. And I have been given a script, excuse me, to read for this online meeting. So I will start with that before we get into the regular agenda. So pursuant to Executive Order 2069 issued by Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20, 2020, and Mayor Keith A. James, Executive Order number 2020-05 issued on April 2nd, 2020, the City of West Palm Beach's boards and committees are conducting meetings through media technology and have released the requirements to have a quorum of its members physically present at City Hall. On April 14th, 2020, Mayor Keith A. James issued Executive Order 2020-09, which specifically provides the rules of procedure for conducting city meetings, including requirements for quasi-judicial hearings. To ensure the ability for the public to continue to participate in this hearing, it is being streamed live and available for viewing in the City Commission chambers located at City Center, 401 Clematis Street, provided that social distancing is required. Additionally, for those wishing to access the meeting remotely, they are able to do so directly through the applicable Zoom webinar link, as well as the city's usual media channels, including WPB-TV 18, the city's website, and the city's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter feeds. Anyone from the public who would like to provide comment on an agenda item is able to do so through the following: in the City Center Flagler Gallery, or by dialing 561-320-6599 and leaving a voicemail, not to exceed 3 minutes, sending an email or video recording to dacpubliccomment@wpb.org, or complete the online public comment form at www.wp.org/public comments. Those accessing the meeting directly through the Zoom may also use the Q&A or raise hands features. Anyone accessing just the Zoom audio using their phone may raise their hands by pressing *9. Regardless of method, please be sure to indicate the agenda hashtag or case hashtag for which you are providing comment. Everyone providing testimony must have video capability and will need to be sworn in. The swearing in will occur at the start of each case on the agenda. If you're about to provide testimony and were not sworn in, please be sure to indicate such and be sworn in before offering your testimony. All right. Am I still in this meeting?
Yes.
Yes. You are. Yep.
In any event, good. After the applicant presents their case, staff will provide a presentation, and then the public will have an opportunity to speak or have their comments read into the record from previously received correspondence. The board will then go into executive session. Prior to rendering a decision, the board will confirm no additional public comments have been received by staff. For the members of the board, it is emphasized that Florida sunshine laws are applicable, and you may not use the chat feature or any other form of individual communication to discuss matters with other board members, the applicant, or the general public during the meeting. Okay, that's done. So you have minutes from February 13th in your packet. Did anyone have any comments or would like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved. Item 3, report from City Urban Designer, Ms. Aponte.
Thank you, Roger. John, do you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance right now? We haven't done it.
We can if you and the chair so desire. Yes.
So, Roger, do you mind if we do the Pledge of Allegiance now before we move on with the meeting?
Yes, please. Who would like to lead that?
Roger?
Oh, there we go, the flag. Perfect. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of
United
the
States
United
States of
States of
of
America
the Republic,
and to the republic which stands
one nation,
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with
for liberty and justice for all.
That was a lot of pressure to remember that. Okay, beautiful. Now we can go on to item 3. Ms. Aponte?
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you joining. I hope everybody and your family is well and healthy, and you are taking all the precautions necessary to be able to control this. We are in the city doing everything necessary to continue the operation of the city, and that's why we're doing all the public hearings through the Zoom process. And this is the first DAC meeting that is being conducted through a virtual meeting, but we have done several meetings, and so far we have been able to handle everything and continue the development process as usual. So that's a good news on the situation. That's all I have to say today. We have just one case on the agenda, and we are hoping it will not be that long. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ana Maria. Yep, and I will again skip remarks other than to express my excitement over the repaving of Flagler Drive in front of the Ben. That is great news. Any ex parte communication for today's case?
Mr. Chair, I have a declaration of a conflict on this case, so I'll be, I think, blacking out my screen and rejoining at the end, recusing myself, and we'll follow up with the form.
Okay, so noted. Anybody else? Any comment? Any ex parte communication?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Public hearing for today. So anyone that is listening on computers remotely wants to make comment, we just gave you a list on how to contact the meeting or forward any request to speak or be heard. We have today, is it regular swearing in of speakers, Ana Maria?
Yes, we'll just do it right now.
Yes.
Okay, anyone that will be providing testimony?
Mr. Chair, I will bring, I'll bring all the applicants onto the screen, and they will be on video, and then we can swear them in and begin your item. Hold on just 1 second.
Thank you.
Just a few more. Okay, that should be everybody.
Hey.
Tammy and Keith? Oh yeah, they're there. Okay.
Oh yeah, okay. So to those that will be speaking or providing testimony for today's case,
It doesn't say it's.
Yep, I guess just raise your hand and say that anything you say will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you, God.
I do.
I do.
I do.
Yes.
Beautiful. I didn't hear any no's, so we can move on. Today's case will be presented by staff initially, and then we'll follow up by any presentation by the applicant, but is DAC case number 2003. And that is Ana Maria Ponte, case manager. If you please present the case.
Actually, we're going to start, the applicant will start the presentation,
I knew
and
that.
staff will follow with the explanation of the standards and recommendation.
It'll take me a year to remember that.
Rob, you are on.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just get my screen shared here. All right. Just as a kind of a technical clarification, does everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
And is everybody seeing the PowerPoint presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. My name is Rob Dinsmore with Urban Design Kildare Studios. We are the agent for the 303 Banyan development project. I'm joined today by the applicant, Todd Jacobus with Woodfield Development Company, as well as other members of our design team, Keith Spina and Tammy O'Rourke with the Spina O'Rourke Group, the architects. Colleen Walter, also with Urban Design Kildare Studios, is here with me in the office. We have Greg Bolin, Brian Kelly, and Eric Cooper with Simmons and White, who are the civil and traffic engineers on this project, and Brian Donahue with Insight Studios, who are the landscape architects on the project. We are before you this morning in regards to case 20-03 in your agenda. It's a multi-part request, and we are seeking DAC approval of special review for a 15-story multifamily residential building, which consists of 233 dwelling units, 3,185 square foot of first floor retail. Also, as part of that special review request, we are seeking approval for the utilization of TDRs that are previously approved for this site to increase our building height and FAR under the Quadrillo Garden District Special Incentive District. We also have a request for approval of 4 variances, which we will go over in more detail during the presentation. The site itself is located within the urban core of West Palm Beach and is located in the Quadrillo Garden District, as I mentioned, of the Downtown Master Plan overlay. Project site is located on the north side of Banyan Boulevard between Dixie Highway and Olive Avenue. Banyan Boulevard itself is one of the city's main transportation corridors, east and west within the city, connecting downtown and the Flatwood waterfront. The surrounding uses to our site on the west and the north side are mostly governmental uses: City West Palm Beach City Hall, Palm Beach County Courthouse, and the Palm Beach County Government Center. On the south side, we are surrounded by retail and commercial uses. And directly to the east, as part of this connection to the Flagler waterfront, is the former City Hall site, the redevelopment of the Bin, and the Oversea multifamily building, which happens to also be a Woodfield development project, who is the applicant for this particular project as well. The site itself is 1.66 acres, as I mentioned, along Banyan Boulevard. It currently supports a 4-story, approximately 44,000 square foot office building with 5 drive-through lanes for a financial tenant, Wells Fargo, in that building, and a surface parking lot. The proposed plan of development includes maintaining that existing 4-story office building, as well as 3 of the 5 drive-through lanes. We have the 15-story multifamily building on the western portion of the site with an internal parking structure and almost 32,000 square foot of first floor retail designated here within the light blue. It also includes some surface parking and a 2,332 square foot garden courtyard at the southeast corner of the multifamily building itself, central to our Banyan block. So any project site within the downtown master plan with a site area greater than 50,000 square feet or requesting the utilization of TDRs requires DAC special review. So just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, to hit on these items for anybody that's in attendance or listening, the DAC special review standards include the relationship of the building to the site and the surroundings, circulation and traffic flow review, analysis of the building design itself, and review of public realm improvements. And so we might not hit on all of these items in this exact order, but it is our goal to touch on all of these to make sure this committee can make an informed approval of this project. And so we'll start by touching at and looking at the existing circulation of the site. Our site currently has 4 curb cuts or driveway entrances for ingress egress, 2 of which are along Banyan Boulevard, which almost create a continuous 80-foot curb cut. 50 feet of which, approximately 50 feet of which, are to provide the functional use of the 5 drive-through lanes that exist today. The downtown master plan code allows for a maximum curb cut of 25 feet. And the existing condition in all of these curb cuts as it stands today really does create a potentially hazardous situation for pedestrians. And this is something that we would like to improve on. So with the proposed plan development, multiple improvements have been made in regards to circulation and access to the site. One of our goals as we worked through the design process and trying to make sure that the site would function well with our proposed use and the existing use was to try to maintain the curb cuts in their current location as much as was appropriate to allow for that traffic familiarity to be maintained for the site itself. This also did include a reduction in the width at every curb cut location. None of the curb cuts remain as wide as they were before. We did improve on all of those. The applicant has worked very closely with the current owner of the site and the existing office building and Wells Fargo, the tenant, with the main tenant within that building, to come to an agreement to reduce the drive-through lanes from 5 to 3. And this allowed us to make a reduction at that particular curb cut alone of almost 20 feet. So it really did improve that situation a lot. In addition to the improvements for the curb cuts, which improve public safety, the proposed project also provides several public realm benefits. First being a public open space, a 2,323 square foot garden courtyard, central to our development block with planter wall seating, public art, and convenient public access to the residential lobby as well as the parking structure. We are also proposing multiple streetscape improvements along all of our frontages of this project site to Dixie Highway, Banyan Boulevard, and Olive. Those improvements will include new street trees and landscaping, as well as providing the required structural soil improvements under the sidewalk to support those trees. Decorative paver crosswalks at every driveway for an added safety measure. Additional on-street parking along Banyan Boulevard, bike racks, enhanced bus stop, which includes ADA accessibility and shaded seating under the proposed landscaping along the streetscape. And we have worked in coordination with the city to make sure that our proposed improvements along Banyan Boulevard are coordinated appropriately with the city's proposed improvements to that street. As a TDR receiving site within the downtown master plan, we are eligible to take advantage of the special district incentives that will allow for an increase in our FAR and building height. We are asking DAC to approve that utilization of those TDRs for TDRs that DAC has previously approved to be transferred to our site. This will allow us to increase the height of our building from 10 to 15 stories and the FAR from 2.75 to 3.75, which will result with our proposed development of a total square footage for the entire project site of 271,387 square feet. 44 roughly will be that existing office building to remain on site. So we began this design process at the end of last June with a pre-application meeting with the city and made our initial submittal at the beginning of September. And from that point and literally up until yesterday, we have been working closely in coordination with the city in review of this project and the design, with the main effort trying to be to eliminate or reduce any possible variance requests as much as possible. And this has probably been more taxing on Keith and the architecture group more than anyone, because they really have had to conceptually redesign the first floor of this building 4 or 5 different times, trying to work through possible solutions and finally landed on one, or have come back to different design layouts to make sure that we're going to have a successful project. And what we came to realize is that there were certain constraints that were going to be very hard to overcome. We were trying to deal with the existing functionality of the site as it stands today, especially since we are maintaining that office building in its current location. And even though we are reducing the drive-through lanes from 5 to 3, it still has to be able to function. So that is a constraint item on the design of this project. We are dealing with the actual physical constraints of the site itself. It is a very narrow site, north to south. So when designing a building that has to function, and especially creating a parking structure that needs to function, there are minimum design dimensions that have to be accounted for. And the other item is just the functional requirements for our proposed use and building. When you're talking about vehicular circulation, utilities, the actual day-to-day functionality of a retail space and the multifamily building, all of those things had to be considered. And so as we worked through that process over this month, we really do feel that we have come down to a list of variances that are as much as we can reduce them to require providing a functional design. So I'll kind of walk through those items now. The first variance is for the first floor active use liner along Dixie Highway. The difficulty we ran into here was basically the functionality of our proposed building. We had to provide accurate or appropriate traffic circulation and garage entrance, and then some back of house items that had to be located adjacent to the street for proper pedestrian functionality, egress of the building. And so we were kind of restricted on how much we could provide in that location. The second variance is for the active use liner space along Banyan Boulevard. Again, we really have maximized this as much as possible. One of the biggest hurdles we ran into with this was the drive-through lanes. That requires a good portion of frontage along Banyan to allow those items to function properly. And so, removing that linear footage as well as our traffic to allow circulation for our building, we really did lose some active use liner space there, but we really maximized it with all the other items that we are providing. The third variance is for the active use abutment to our public open space. We would have liked to add some active use liner space along the north side of this public courtyard. However, with the physical restrictions of the site itself being so narrow north to south, we had to provide minimum dimensions for the parking structure to be able to function. And so we were limited in that regard. And the final variance comes back to the drive-through lanes and the driveway width. Again, the downtown master plan allows for a 25-foot driveway width, and we could only reduce that down to 30.8 feet, which is a big improvement on the current 50-foot curb cut in that area. But the existing drive-through lanes in their location, the point of service was so far south that we could not reduce that curb cut any further to allow vehicular movements to safely function in that area. And so that's the reason for this variance request. And so, like I mentioned, we really did go through a pretty thorough design process and in close works with the city and all of their departments. And we feel that we have landed on the minimum variance requests as required for this project. And staff does support all of our variance requests. And so at this time, I will pass the presentation over to Keith Spina to discuss the architecture and the building's relationship with the site and surroundings. So Keith.
Good morning, everyone. It's Keith Spina with Spina O'Rourke. Also here I have Tammy O'Rourke, my partner, and then I have Todd Jacobus and Jason Fosselman, both of Woodfield, and all of us have been sworn in. Rob, can I change the screen, or are you going to do that?
Let me see. Do you have the ability to take over our screen to change the slides? Because if not, it might be easier for you to pull it up.
I don't see that option.
Well, let me stop sharing.
Rob, he'll have to share from his computer, or you'll need to change the slides for him.
Can you share from my computer, Tammy? Hey, Rob, just do the slides for me. Let's keep this easy.
Sure. Let me pull it back
Thank
up.
you. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. I do have my mask, and I'm really excited. Most people have agreed that I look a lot better with my mask on, but in order to hear me, I'm going to drop it down. So again, thank you for being here. Rob, go ahead and go to the next slide. And so we started design. Rob has done a great job describing the property. This is the overall site plan. One of the things that I'll mention a little bit as we go through, but our office is now in the Oversea building, which Todd and Jason also own and developed, and we're really proud of it. We think it's one of the best looking buildings in downtown. And although Rob mentioned that we've worked tirelessly redesigning the building, as the city staff always reminds us, it was all in the hopes of continuing to improve the project, and we think it was well worth it. So, Anna Maria and your team, thank you for helping us continue push us, and we love the project the way it's turning out today. So next slide, Rob. And one of the things we wanted to do is, as we started to design this project, we wanted to really understand the surrounding properties. I think it's also part of what DAC looks at. Go ahead, Rob. And so what we've done is we provided a series of photos of just some of the existing buildings. That's a really recent photo of the Oversea. And if you look really hard behind the light pole, you can see the new Spina O'Rourke sign that we put up on the Oversea. And our offices are directly across from the Wells Fargo. Next slide. Again, looking from the corner of Banyan and Olive, looking kind of to the northwest, and you see the Wells Fargo. And in the background, you see a hint of the drive-through, and then you see one of the governmental centers in the background. Next slide. And then this is, one of the things that we've all talked about already, but one of the things that we're most excited about. Although it's existing, it's a pretty, I think Rob mentioned, not only dangerous, but just pretty, it's not a pleasant view to look at. We all walk by this all the time, people that enjoy downtown, and you walk by drive-through lanes and curb cuts and more curb cuts and parking lots. And we think that the proposed design today is really going to have a significant impact on the whole property and the surroundings, but also this view, as well. Next slide. Then we look real quickly, the Chase Bank across the street to the south. Next slide. The little retail building across the street just west of Chase. So now we're on the intersection of Dixie. And then we look at the City Hall. And next slide. And then now we're looking at the property in the background. You'll see the Oversea Way in the background, and you're looking east on Banyan Boulevard. And it's kind of a mixture of buildings, some relatively tall and then some very low scale. Next slide. And then finally, this is looking at the property from Dixie High. I don't know where this is from. Next slide. Okay, and then one of a really prominent view that we'll talk about as we present the design, but is heading south on Dixie, looking to the southeast, and you see the courthouse parking garage, but also the parking on grade that's currently where our building will go. Next slide. And then the final view is one of the, I think everybody knows that Banyan is getting ready to get redone as well. And I think they just had a kickoff meeting last week, but this will be not only from this intersection, but a real, vista looking from Banyan heading east from the west side of town. And we think of Banyan as a major thoroughfare east-west to get in and out of downtown. And so we're excited to be able to add some great architecture to that view. Next slide. So what I wanted to do now is just kind of walk you through the building plans. And go ahead, next slide. We started on the site plan. We have the existing Wells Fargo, the drive-throughs. And then one of the criteria that we really had to work long and hard on was Wells Fargo had a lease, and we had to figure out a way to manage their site circulation, their drive-through, their arrival experience for visitors to Wells Fargo, and parking on grade. And so that is something that we were able to do. Staff was really involved in that, and this is a reflection of it in the current site plan. Next slide. And then if we now zoom in a little bit, so now we're looking at the building, which again is just west of the Wells Fargo building. And some of the major components that we'll talk about today are the public open space at the southeast corner. Then we have our residential lobby for all the apartment residents. We have some retail space on the corner. We have a garage, and then we have the back of house space, which supports the building. As we were designing this project, thinking about the surroundings, we feel that the Dixie-Banyan intersection is pretty busy, and it kind of has a commercial feel to it. So we thought that was a perfect place for the retail. And then we wanted to have the focus on the residential closer to the east, which is also close to the intercoastal. And we just think that, it's kind of, if you wanted to tell your friends to come over and say, hey, come down Flagler, go up Banyan and park anywhere on the metered parking and walk a little bit further west, and I think that's a great experience. So that's how we came to locate our public open space in our residential lobby in that part of the, kind of the softer side of the site. Next slide. And now I'll go pretty quickly through the plans, but this is a mezzanine level. So the first floor of the building is a 20-foot, floor to floor. Behind it hides 2 levels of parking, but this is the upper level of the resident first floor experience. So it's today it's evolved a lot with work from home and all those types of things, but it's kind of a lounge, business lounge where residents could have meetings, work from home, and then it has, to the left of that is the retail space, which is 2 stories high. And then of course, behind it is the parking garage. Next slide. Then we get into a couple levels that this is actually second floor, which is our first liner level. And so we've lined with residential units, created a single loaded corridor of residential units that line and buffer the garage. Next slide. Third floor looks exactly the same. Next slide. Fourth floor, exactly the same. Next slide. And then finally, we get to the 5th floor, which houses the majority of the amenity space for the apartment building. And so here we have an incredible outdoor, wonderful meeting spaces. We have a combination of spaces where a lot of people could gather, like the turf lawn, and then we have private, more intimate spaces around it. We do have an elevated pool deck at the east end of the site. And then on the inside, what you see is club room, amenity space, restrooms, fitness center, and then apartments surround the rest of it. Next slide. Then the next floor we get to is the 6th through the 15th. And that now becomes our typical apartment level floor plan. It's a double loaded corridor with apartments on both sides. And it has a combination of studios, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Next slide. And then the top of the building is we have an incredible rooftop terrace that is east facing and just has incredible views of both the Intercoastal and the Atlantic Ocean. And we did a rooftop terrace on the Oversea, and it's just about finished, and we all can't wait to use it as people that occupy part of the building. But we realized when we had finished the Oversea that although it's a beautiful view out to the west, we really wanted to locate this on the east end to really get some dramatic views for the residents. Next slide. And so now we'll talk a little bit more about the exterior. Go ahead. And again, in keeping with just trying to really, figure out what's existing in the market, this is a slide that shows not only some existing buildings, which partially existing is One West Palm on the top right, and then we have the Oversea, the Ben, and then the Alexander Tower, which are all existing projects. On the left is Broadstone in the middle, and then a couple of projects that, although they're not built yet, were previously approved. And so we studied the architecture, we studied things that we work closely with the city staff on, were things like how to screen liners, how to treat big walls on buildings. And so we thought this was really helpful to be able to do that. So these were some existing and proposed projects in the city. Next slide, Rob. And then this is in more detail, we started to really study existing buildings that were very similar in product type, meaning most of these are residential, multi-story, in most cases, high-rise buildings. And so we just looked at different ways, some of them that are older, such as the Strand, and then some that are the newest, in the case, again, is of the Oversea. Go ahead, Rob. And then another thing that was, really important to our project, and, it took us by surprise that, when you talk about public open spaces and urban parks and cities, I think our team didn't really think there was that much that we could look and see, but all of a sudden we started walking around downtown, and we've started to have quite the collection of really wonderful spaces in downtown. And so, you can see there's a variety of these. Some are Broadstone, some are out in front of the Ben. One of them's at Parkline, and then you have Alexander Tower. And the one at Alexander Tower was really interesting for a couple of reasons. It's a cool little urban park, but it also did something that we are going to talk a little bit more, which is it combined the open space and the art and public places. And, you know, we'll talk about art and public places in more depth, but we thought that it was a really creative way that the art and public places was treated in this case. And we wanted to continue to build on that. Next slide. So real quick, the next couple slides are a little boring, but we'll get to some fun stuff. But this just shows vertically the organization of the building. So it's a 15-story building. When you ask the building code thinks it's 16 stories because we have a mezzanine level on the first floor. So the first floor is 20 feet floor to floor, but the building department counts it as 2 floors. It's really 1 floor according to the zoning code. And that's something that you'll see throughout downtown. And it starts to show that what it allows you to do is get an extra level of parking in the 4th floor. So you get 5 levels of parking in 4 floors of building. And then it just shows once you get above the parking level, it's apartments on a double loaded. Next slide, Rob. And so now we're going to show just quickly, and then we'll get into some 3-dimensional sketch that we think talk a little bit better and show the architecture. But you know, one of the things that we wanted to do is we were kind of critical of some of the buildings in downtown, including ones that we had designed. And we wanted to design a building that the architecture in most cases could stand on its own and did not need to add a bunch of, you know, kind of fluffy architecture or treatment onto the facade of the building. And so we feel that we have, you know, a strong base, we have a middle field, and then we have an interesting top to the building. The building does have a sense of verticality to it. And then we feel that we've really mixed a combination of materials that are the base building materials that help break up the massing of the building. So I'll go quickly through some 2-dimensional elevations of the 4 sides, and then we'll get into some 3-dimensional studies. Go ahead, Rob. So that's the south elevation. This is the west elevation. This does show the corner of the building on the right-hand side. That will be one of the main views as you head east down Banyan. Next slide. The north, although it looks like a big giant blank wall on the lower half of the building, all of that is screened by the county garage slightly north. It's 5 or 10 feet away from this wall. And so none of this wall will be able to be seen from the public right away. Go ahead, next slide. This is the east elevation. Again, a large part of the east elevation on the garage portion is screened completely by the Wells Fargo building, but we'll talk more about the treatment of the garage in a little bit. Next slide. And so this just shows the context of these buildings in the surroundings. So you can see where we've labeled 303 Banyan in the top picture, and it shows its context. Next slide. A couple more views showing the same thing. Again, you see the north view with the big garage, but you see the dotted line that shows the county garage that screens the majority of that building. Okay, and so next slide. And so the next thing relative, when we were studying the design, it also helped us to really work with the city staff to understand how the building would be seen from, you know, the community. One of the things that we worked a lot on was our blank walls and breaking up the building. And so we did a series of studies, mostly heading south down Dixie Highway, because it's a really prominent view, and we thought that it was just a great way to study the building. This also was one of our most challenging corners of the building, which was the northwest corner. So this is a view looking south on Dixie. Next slide. And then this starts to show, as you can tell, us placing a massing model of our building into the view. And then we're just going to go through a series of these where we get closer. So next slide. Now we've come a little bit closer. We're in front of the courthouse. And then you see the garage on your left, which is directly adjacent to our slide. And then you start to see our building placed in the background. Next slide. And then again, go back one real quick, Rob. So this is the first glimpse of the parking lot. And really, once you've gotten far enough south that you can see past the garage, you start to feel the first real presence of our building on the corner. Now, next slide. and then that places the building, just really a massing model that starts to show. This is one of the areas where we really broke up with the use of materials, organization of locations of windows, and then also just breaking up the massing on this northwest corner of the building that, we were pushed really hard by staff, and we feel that the end result is better because of it. Next slide. And then now we have some three-dimensional renderings that, this really gives you a feel. And this is a rendering looking at the southwest corner of the building as you're coming down Banyan Boulevard, you're heading east, and you start to see a real, kind of iconic, but, we always like to think the iconic part of the architecture is the experience of the entire building, not just one corner. But we do feel that this is going to be a pretty iconic statement when you're turning off of Australian or you're coming in from 95 and you jump on Banyan Boulevard. We feel that this will be a placemaker. And it starts to, again, show the base of the building, the field, and then, some special architecture at the top. Next slide. And then this is one of the toughest corners from a design perspective, but we feel that the treatment of it is really successful. So this is now back north of the building, looking south, and you see the whole corner in the foreground is really our garage, but we've treated it with a combination of materials and spandrel glass that really gives it an activated feeling. There's some existing landscape, and we're going to continue to improve on that helps buffer the northern side of that facade. But we think it's a great solution, and we're proud to show it. So go ahead, next slide. And now we get to the really fun part, which is we feel is the eastern experience. So this is a view, again, looking kind of from the corner of Banyan and Olive, and you see you can already see the reduction in the foreground of the drive-through canopy. You do catch the corner of the Wells Fargo building. It is a smaller 3-car drive-through canopy, and then you start to see the first of our garage, which is the lower building in the foreground with our amenity deck on the upper level, and then the main entrance into the apartment building, and then again, the architecture. Next slide. And so we wanted to really now dive into some of the parts that were really the fun and exciting part, but it was the public open space, how we treated our active liner, and then of course art and public places, which played a really important role in the design of our building. So go ahead, next please. So again, we always like to remind everybody of what our neighboring properties look like today. Not very impressive, and we were excited to be able to improve significantly on that. Next slide. And so we're going to go back and just talk a little bit about our public open space. As I described earlier, the eastern side of our site we feel is the softer, gentler residential, especially with the Oversea being right across the street. So we focused on providing the public open space at that eastern end of the building. Next slide. And then another thing that we did is although there was a specific square footage of public open space that I think we've met, we wanted to somehow figure out how we could give the appearance of more public open space to not only the residents, but also the public. And so go to the next slide. And so the next slide, what you find here is our public open space is, can anybody see my mouse on the screen? No? So Rob, if you can just show where our lobby doors are. No, yeah, that. So right there where Rob's cursor is so our public open space is to the right of that, the east, but we've treated the corner of the public lobby of the building as a very transparent corner. We've also taken the materials, both hardscape, vertical treatment of materials, and even in some small token, some of the landscape, and we pulled it right into the building lobby. So we think that as a resident, your public open space will be the outdoor area, but also the indoor area. As a visitor, you'd get the same experience. As a non-visitor, but public walking by, we hope that with the activity going on in the ground floor lobby and the public open space that is open to everyone, you'll see the same experience. And so it was something that, we worked really hard, and we think that, hopefully the staff agreed that it was a little bit unique way to exaggerate the public open space, but we feel it's effective. Next slide. And then we started to, work very closely with another part of the building that we were, challenged with, which was the treatment of a portion of our garage that there was just no other way to get the project to work without having this happen. But how do we hide a portion of the garage with not the traditional liner of putting apartments in front of it, but something more creative? And so one of the first things we did is we started talking about art in public places. And we thought it would be really interesting, kind of like they did a little bit with Alexander Tower. I think Broadstone also did a great job of it. But instead of just taking a sculpture and putting it on a pedestal in the front lawn, which is one way of treating it, we thought that we could take the building itself and try to work with art in public places as if the artists were trying to design the facade of the building. So what you see here is we actually reached out to a couple of what we'll call emerging, but also local artists. And these are two different concepts that these artists came up with that treated the corner of our building in a way that was fully integrating art in public places into the building itself. We've been working pretty closely with the city staff, but also with Sabile. And I think that the staff agrees. We have this crazy idea here, which is today we're going to present a project that can be built out of conventional construction materials, but we'd like to leave an opportunity to come back to not only DAC, but to go to art in public places and have them continue to work with us to develop an actual physical concept for the treatment of the building and the open space, and incorporate the art in public places really into the building design. So these were the first concepts. And in order to do this, what we did is we agreed with staff, well, today we're going to present conventional construction materials and how you would apply those to the building, so that if we don't come back and show you the art in public places, the project that we're going to approve today could be built and it would just be conventional construction and there's nothing more to talk about. And then we could either contribute to the art in public places fund, or we could put a piece of art somewhere on the public property and meet the same requirements that way. But I wanted to just share this because this was a really important inspiration that led us to the design that we're now going to share. So go ahead, next comment, or next slide. So now again, we look, so the building, the lower building on the right-hand side is our garage. You can already see the inspiration where we've treated the center portion of the garage with a spandrel curtain wall. We've treated the sides with a combination of using the building openings, which it is a garage and it has some openings, but also apply some really interesting creative materials to the facade to create some real unique interest. The treatment of the hardscape and landscape at the pedestrian level is also really critical to the success of the treatment of this whole facade. So we've been working closely with Brian Donahue, our landscape architect, and we've come up, we think, a great public open space that also adds to buffering our liner. Next slide. These are just a couple more images of, a great nighttime experience walking, out to dinner. You come out of the apartment lobby and you sit in the little urban park here and you wait for your friends to meet you to go downtown to sit at a restaurant and eat dinner. So next slide. And so we go back to this. Go ahead, one more slide, please, Ron. One more? I guess we wanted to really share. So this was a series of drawings that the staff had asked us to do that got into great detail of how are you actually going to build the construction of the garage to create this liner effect. So what we have is a series of layers of this building that show how we build in it. So the first top left corner shows the garage with a design of a kind of random and abstract openings in the garage. And then it shows we've applied the curtain wall. And then you go to the right and all of a sudden we started to apply some panels on the first layer. The slide on the left applies more panels on other layers. It gives really this three-dimensional effect to the facade. And then the final is just an enlarged version of that. So the next slide, go ahead, Rob. So this slide, please don't ask me a whole lot of questions because this is really complicated, but we even went as far as understanding in construction methods of how we would literally build this stuff. We do have physical samples of these materials, and we'll show you briefly some pictures. We also have them in my office next to me, and if for some reason someone wanted to see a piece, we're happy to hold it up in front of the screen. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Rob. Next slide. So now what we've done, I think like we've done a couple of times, so this is building this building out of conventional construction materials. And it shows a zoom in of certain areas and is labeled the materials. I think in your packet, you guys can see each of these materials very specifically. We'll go ahead and go through a couple slides that touch on them. Go ahead, Rob. This is another portion of the building. One of the things that we did at the ground floor is we included a very contemporary cast stone wall material that we think that looks great, but also is going to give a real elegant feel to the base of the building at the pedestrian level where everybody experiences it. Next slide. Next slide. There's a bunch of the materials. So these are some of the paint colors. The cast stone, this is a picture of one of the materials that we've worked really closely with our construction team to figure out how to pull off, again, what we think is a fairly contemporary, very elegant cast stone material that will be part of the cladding of the first floor level. And then we have some porcelain tiles around the building on the ground plane that were also pulled into the building lobby. Next slide. Glass, one of the things that was really important in our building lobby, which plays into the public open space, was a very transparent treatment of the glass at the ground floor. And so we have some great details that we think will really blur the vision between the inside and the outside of the building and the public space and the building lobby. So we have clear glass, and then we have a tinted glass as we look in the apartment building higher up the building. Next slide. This is a physical sample of one of the panels that we had fabricated to make sure two things. One, we could build it and fasten to a building, but two, that we could also afford to do that. And then the material will not be a silver, it'll actually have a wood grain. We had some inspiration stimulated by our artists, but also some other architecture that we studied that we thought that would give a real warm feeling to the facade. So go ahead, next slide. And then this again is some of the inspiration that we've shown. The top left corner shows a very transparent building lobby. The picture in the middle on the top is a sample of the cast stone that we feel again is a very elegant, rich material. And then one of the pictures on the right that shows the benches is we want a place that not only looks like a public open space, but you actually can sit there and enjoy it. You can enjoy it during the summer because there's a lot of shade. You can enjoy it at nighttime because there's lighting. And so that's kind of some of the inspiration there. Next slide. And then the last two slides are real simple. This is what the property looks like today. And because of working with the city staff, with our entire design team, and the opportunity presented by Woodfield Development, is we feel that we have an opportunity to improve on it. So the next, and I think last slide is, go ahead, Rob, is just back to the vision of what this property will look like when we're completed. And I think that's all I had, Rob. So back over to you.
Thank you, Keith. So just to reiterate, the application requests again, we are requesting DAC approval of the special review of this 15-story multi-family residential building, as well as part of that, the utilization of the TDRs previously approved for this site to allow for the increase of our building height in FAR, and the approval of the 4 variances. All of these requests have staff support. I'm going to clarify a couple of things. You'll see a note at the bottom of the screen. As I mentioned, we've been working with staff pretty closely since September up until yesterday, actually, to clarify and resolve a couple items. These traffic-related items, I'm brushing through them because we did resolve these items sufficiently. We believe we're working through that, and we'll have those resolved with our follow-up PPRC resubmittal. One other item that was clarified with staff is condition 1D within your packet under the special review. The surface parking lot should be adjusted to maintain the minimum setback area. This item has been clarified with staff. Our current design does meet those standards, so this condition is going to be removed as well, and Anna Maria may touch on this in her presentation. All other conditions associated with the requests for this case are acceptable to the applicant. So thank you for your time, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have, and we will turn this over to Anna Maria.
Thank you, Robert and Keith. Very thorough presentation. I will start sharing my screen now and do the staff presentation. Can you all see my screen? Good. Okay. So as we say, I'm gonna go. It doesn't. As Robert mentioned, this is the request for this project is for the special review. In the case of the downtown, as it was mentioned, large-scale developments and projects utilizing special incentives are subject to the additional scrutiny due to the size, potential impacts, and relative importance within the urban fabric. This project is one of those projects, is a substantial size of a project and is utilizing the incentives. So it's a great opportunity. It has a great opportunity to positively benefit the area north of Clematis Street, and with the other breaks that are going in the area, like the overseas that was mentioned, the area north of Clematis is really getting transformed into a different district. Traditional was a government office district, and now with all these is being transformed into a more mixed-use district with addition of not only the residentials that are proposed by the 303 Banyan, but the residential uses that are almost completed for the overseas, the hotel for the band, and then one West Palm that is in the future is going to be completed with a substantial number of residential and probably other use. So it's an important transformation, and the details on this project, we have been working very hard with the applicant to really engage and make the best that we can with this project, acknowledging all the constraints that we have for this site. In addition, the applicant is requesting for variances, as Rob mentioned, and staff will analyze those ones also. As the variances are going to be also impacting the compliance for the special review standards, so staff will analyze first the variance request and then go through the special reviews. The 4 variances, as mentioned already by Robert, so I'm not gonna go over them, but in essence, all the variances are related to the construction of the public realm. They are all affecting how we construct our public realm and what is gonna be the ground floor environment for pedestrians. And it's very important to mention that the quality of the public realm is fundamental for a vibrant downtown environment. The public realm is not only built by the streetscape, so the streets and the landscape, but it's also built by the activities created by the private building along the street. So we have done great progress in the city since the master plan was created to build on the history of the downtown, but also make every project makes the conditions better. You can see on the west side of the screen, on the left side of the screen, you can see some of the cases where we have no active uses facing the street and the impact that generated on the environment for pedestrians. To the contrary, you can see on the right side when we are able to work with projects that provide an activity along the street and how they engage the street and the different perspective that it has and how the environment that is created, it is a big difference. And that's why staff works with the applicants so hard to be able to make the projects as close to compliance, full compliance is possible, but when we have constraints that will not allow the full compliance with the active use requirement, to work with the applicant to make every improvement possible to reduce the variance as much as possible. And the applicant can give faith of that. Staff has been working with them, and we have done everything possible to make the best we can with this project under the circumstances and constraints. A part of what the master plan is doing, it has specific regulations that ensure the quality of the public realm. Section 94.109 specifically states what an active use ground floor means, and it's an active use that attracts pedestrians. Activity provides direct access to the general public from the sidewalk or the public open space, and conceals uses designed for parking and other non-active uses if present. Ground floor active uses generally include, but are not limited to, retail, other commercial, office, restaurants, coffee shops, libraries, institutional, educational, cultural facilities, residential, and entrance lobbies. So with this in mind, staff analyzed the 3 of the variants that is specifically related to active use requirements. So it's the active use requirement along Dixie Highway, the one along Banyan Boulevard, and also the active use requirement around the perimeter of the public office. So the first one is regarding Dixie Highway. And as Rob mentioned, Dixie Highway is considered by the Downtown Master Plan as a primary street. So primary street is the highest classification in terms of the quality of public realm that we want. So it's the street that we want to give the most priority. In this case, Dixie Highway and Banyan Boulevard are also both primary streets. In the case of Dixie Highway, the building frontage for this project is 143 feet and 143 feet, which is a very narrow site. When you think a parking structure with a double loaded corridor, 2 aisles is 120 feet. By the time you add the active uses, so it's really constrained. So in this project, they are already building kind of inefficient parking when you have 2 aisles, but only 3 parking rows. So they're already given up one of those parking rows to accommodate the linear uses that are required. In particular, for the case of Dixie Highway, the active use required is 60%. The lot frontage along Dixie is less than 250 feet. So the requirement is only 60% of the frontage. That equates to 86 feet. The applicant is provided 47.5% of that frontage with active uses. So it is requesting a variance of 12.5%. That equates to 18 feet. Staff has analyzed the request, and due to the specific conditions of the site, that includes the buildable lot depth that is only 143 feet, and the limited options to lay out the parking, staff considers the variance is justified. It's also important to know that the location of the service areas, Dixie Highway was one of the best locations for those service areas. We worked with the applicant, and it was basically not viable to find another location for the garbage chute. The operation of the garbage is going to work on the interior of the site, but the vertical operation of the garbage from the residential units was, this was the only location that it could be viable for the layout of the building. So the trash room is located along Dixie Highway, as well as 2 other service areas that are necessary to be located along the frontage, the garage access and the vertical circulation. So despite we tried to find, and I appreciate the applicant did a very big effort to find another locations of how we can move the trash room, it was not possible to find a viable location for this. That results in, as I mentioned, a non-active uses to be 52.5% of the frontage, and the active use is located on the corner of Banyan, and it provides 47.5%. The active use location is the best location that we think it is possible for the project. As Keith mentioned, the corner of Banyan and Dixie is a prominent corner, and the building is designed in a way that highlights the importance. So that was a good option, and we think we did the best possible to find, reduce the variance as much as possible. One of the things that we worked through the approval process is originally the fire command room was located on the north side of the active use, and we were able to work out with the applicant and with the fire department to find a different location for that fire command room. So the active use was extended and the variance request was reduced from the original 33 feet to the 18 feet that is presented right now. So we have done some progress on that, and we think this is the best, it's a good outcome. The applicant is also work with the staff to provide some treatment for the non-active uses along. So the area that is going to be dedicated to the garbage is going to provide glazing with interior shading devices. So in terms of the pedestrian environment, the pedestrian will perceive the retail facade with the glazing, the storefront continue to cover all the area, and they will probably will not notice that is in there. So that has also helped to reduce the impact of negative impact into the pedestrian environment for the non-active uses provided. Regarding Banyan Boulevard, the justifications are very similar. The constraints of the site or the dimension, the depth of the site is also affecting the provision of active uses along Banyan Boulevard. It is the active use requirement along Banyan Boulevard is 80%, as the frontage is larger than 250 feet. So the applicant is required to provide, in this case, 367 feet of frontage with active uses. The project is providing 68%. That includes the commercial uses towards the west of the site, then the residential lobby with the leasing office, and of course the existing commercial use where the Wells Fargo is located towards the east of the site. That is a total of 68%, 313 feet of frontage that is provided with active use. However, as Rob also explained, there are a couple of features that exist right now, like the bank drive-through that the applicant is reducing, but it still has to remain in the current location due to the contractual agreements with the existing tenant. And then the entrance to the parking garage and the small surface parking lot that is provided from Banyan Boulevard. That is accomplishing like basically 17% of the frontage is accommodated as a vehicular use area. In addition to that, the applicant is providing the open space, the public open space required. After several works with the applicant, the location of the public open space is the best option that we have for this site. Not only, as Keith explained, because of its proximity to the eastern side of the site, to Flagler Drive and more the views, but also the layout of the building makes it the most appropriate location. However, what it happens with this location, it makes the parking garage, if you see, it's immediately located on the north side. So the public open space does not provide an active use along the frontage, and therefore it cannot be counted as active use. That will also accommodate, it will translate into the next variance that the applicant is asking. As I mentioned, the open space cannot be counted as active use because the uses are not provided along the frontage, along the adjacent to the open space. But regardless of that, the open space provided is a very beautifully designed garden courtyard that provides access to the lobby on the west side and definitely buffers the parking garage. So it is an asset for the project, and we think it's going to be a great amenity for the community. If the open space were counted as part of the active use, the active use frontage will have increased from 68% to 83%. So considering this, the fact that the open space is very well put together design that will be an amenity, staff considers the request is reasonable due to the constraints of the site, to the lack of the inability to be able to provide active uses on the north side of that open space. But we think the open space will still provide a very pleasant pedestrian environment along the street for anyone walking on the sidewalk, and will definitely create an amenity. So staff considers the request is reasonable due to the constraints of that. And if we go to the next request for variance that the applicant is requested regarding the minimum percentage of active uses along a perimeter of a public open space, if this variance is granted, then some active uses will be provided, and that will definitely will be a variance will be provided for the compliance with the active uses, and that will mitigate also the active use variance. In this case, the code requires that open spaces have a minimum of 25% of its perimeter with active uses. That for this project, we have only 17.3% provided, and is the lobby area that is located on the west side of the open space. I mentioned the north side of the open space has only the garage, and the east side has the surface parking lot and access to the garage. As it was mentioned already, the narrow configuration of the site makes it difficult to provide an active use along the north side of the public open space. The proposed parking is already an efficient configuration, so if any requirement had to be complied with for the active uses along the north side, it will basically make the parking garage totally dysfunctional, so it will not be working. So in this sense, the variance request is justified, and staff is supporting this request also. To mitigate the lack of active uses, the applicant has worked with the staff very a lot to provide architectural treatments to propose to screen the parking garage. Keith went in a lot of detail to explain how this design was conceived, and staff agree it's a very good put together design that will provide an interesting screening for the parking garage. We believe like kind of this box that is ultimately created as works very well with the 4-story existing Wells Fargo building, and creates kind of a sculptural piece in itself as a background to the open space. So staff supports the design of this screening and accepts that it basically highlights the open space and is not a detrimental, despite it does not provide the active use required. The fourth variance, despite is not related to active uses, also affect the active use requirement. It's from section 94.111.03 regarding the maximum width of the curb cuts. As it was also explained by the applicant, the maximum curb cut allowed by the downtown master plan is 25 feet in width. The applicant is proposing to have the drive-through reduce to 30.8 feet. The existing one is 82 feet in width, and it has 5 drive-through color lanes. And the applicant is reducing these to 3, which is a big improvement for the area. In addition to the drive-through, the current configuration also has an additional entrance to the parking lot with a parking aisle. The existing curb cut is 30 feet and 20 foot wide parking aisle. The project is also proposing to reduce that and will substantially reduce the vehicular use area for the final project. So as I mentioned, the drive-throughs will be reduced from 5 to 3, reducing from the current 81 feet to 30.8. The access point will also be reduced from 30 to 24, and the parking aisles will be reduced from 24 feet in width to 18. So if you look at this drawing, it is very telling. The yellow is the total area dedicated to vehicular use right now. That is around 135 feet in width. That is it works right now as basically a continuous curb cut is perceived by the pedestrians, and the new project is reducing that perception to 72.8 feet, from which 18 are dedicated to the parking aisle, and that area will have a landscape buffer screening the parking, and it will be aligned with the sidewalk. So it will basically, for the pedestrian, will be read as 2 separate curb cuts, one 30 feet in width for the drive-through, and an additional 24 for the entrance to the parking lot. So staff also supports these variances as is reduction of the current nonconformity, and the applicant has worked with the staff to reduce as much as possible and mitigate the impacts. In conclusion, staff finds that the required variances meet the standards found in section 9448D6. And there are particular conditions that exist and are not the result of the applicant actions. The lot depth, as I mentioned, does not allow a parking garage to be built in an efficient manner and provide additional active uses. The location of the proposed service areas is the only option that allows the adequate layout of the building. And the site currently includes 81-foot wide drive-throughs, and the proposal is reducing that existing nonconformity. The applicant has worked with the staff to reduce the request to the minimum necessary to make the project work. And the requested variances will not be detrimental to the public welfare and support the redevelopment of the existing surface parking lot. That will be a substantial enhancement of the area. Staff though has 3 conditions that we're recommending for these for the variances. The first one is the applicant shall ensure that the execution of the parking garage facade articulation reflects the details indicated in the renderings presented as part of the Downtown Action Committee's submittal in terms of material, color variations, numbers, or elements provided. Staff just wants to ensure that as the project progresses and is developed, the details of the facade articulation are not reduced or diminished due to their construction project development plans. So we want to ensure that what is presented to the board remains during the entire project and is the final product. One thing to mention in here, as Keith referred in his presentation, we are presenting these as an architectural treatment for the garage, so it does not include the art in public places. So the idea with this is the project is approved as it is right now, as it is presented to the board. If in the future the applicant decides to engage the services of an artist and modify the architectural treatment or even the public open space, any modifications to the current proposal will have to come back to the board for a separate approval. So if that happens, you will see the project again as modifications of the public open space and the architectural treatment and the incorporation of the art in public. The second condition that staff is recommending is regarding the public open space. We're recommending that the suspended paver system be implemented within the public open space to ensure that the proposed trees grow to its full potential. Right now, the city has specific requirements for structural soil along the street trees, along the street, but those requirements are not applicable to the private open space or the public open space. So in this case, we are recommending a suspended paver system that is actually an enhanced system to really ensure that the trees have the ability to grow as it's shown on the renderings and have the ability to fully screen the garage. The third condition is the one that is the paver area proposed at the 2 driveways along Banyan Boulevard shall be extended to the 16-feet setback. This one is in reference to the pavers within the driveway itself. The drive-through already has the pavers extended. The entrance to the parking lot does not, so we're just requesting the applicant to extend it to match it. Regarding the special review standards, staff has reviewed the project for compliance with the standards in section 9454B2. We believe the project complies with all the standards. The applicant went in detail in explanation of how the project complies with these standards, but staff is going to go into some explanation also about this. Regarding the first 3 standards, relationship of building to site and surroundings, building design and public uses, staff believes the project is going to be a great enhancement for the area. It is an area, as I mentioned before, that is characterized by government uses, and now a new dynamic is being introduced with more residential uses. The building is proposed with a 15-story portion, a 5-story parking garage, and the existing 4-story building, and it's this variation of heights go in context with the different heights that are within the district. And this shows, like, for example, the 15-story portion of the building goes as tall as the existing county courthouse, but the parking garage and the 4-story building remains at a lower scale. It is more in compliance with existing county parking garage or even the historic courthouse building. The project is also placing the building in a way that highlights the importance of the corner of Banyan and Dixie Highway. It is a focal point, is the terminated vista, almost the terminated vista for Banyan Boulevard, and the applicant has proposed kind of the building, the tallest portion of the building located at that corner with a feature element at the corner that almost makes it a tower element as a feature. So it's gonna be a landmark, definitely for the downtown. It's very visible, as you can see on the picture on the screen. On the left-hand side, you have the building projecting on that area, and it will be kind of a tower coming out in there. It's also, the applicant has proposed the building doing a transition towards the north side on Dixie. The building is set back from the north property line, the tower portion 35 feet. So it has a 5-story component that lines with existing county parking garage and then steps down to the historic building. So the corner building with the 15-story along Banyan Boulevard is the most appropriate location for the tall building. If we consider also across the street, the side on the south side of Banyan Boulevard is currently zoned to be able to do a 12-story building. The applicant went in a lot of detail to explaining what we have been working with them and in terms of the architectural treatment for all the non-active uses. So staff is comfortable that the provisions, the features that are provided for the project will effectively screen the non-active uses, not only on the southeast corner of the parking garage next to the public open space, but also the northwest corner of the parking garage that is highly visible from Dixie Highway. Again, as I mentioned, considering that the architectural treatment is linked to the various requests, the staff has recommended the condition that was mentioned on the variance to ensure that the quality of the details of the screening are maintained as illustrated on the presentation. One additional condition that staff is recommending is regarding the landscape materials proposed to soften the parking garage. You can see in this picture, the renders show some landscape material hanging from the pool deck, and there's also a green wall on the lower portion of the garage. The applicant is proposing to compare a jasmine and blue sky flower for those two elements. Staff is recommending that the installation of the appropriate trellis system to support the growth of those vines, as is shown on the renderings. We want to be sure that the plant material that is proposing there can have the technical support to grow as shown. We think it's a very nice element to be added. It's not only the hard elements for architectural treatment, but adding the landscape component, it will enhance the quality of the screening for this building. And as you can see, this is gonna be still highly visible from the street. So we think it's an appropriate element to add. Staff is also requiring that these they prepare a maintenance plan, and that maintenance plan will be added as part of the site plan approval, will be included for the site plan approval for the project. In terms of the public open space and the streetscape enhancements, we believe the project is a substantial enhancement of the public realm. The current conditions of the surface parking lot does not really provide any activity on the street, so the new building will provide additional activity with the street, with the entrance to the lobby and the retail use on the corner of Banyan and Dixie. It's a good enhancement for the quality of the public realm. Staff is recommending that in the design of the public open space, one of the benches proposed for the plaza gets turned towards the sidewalk, so at least one of them has the ability to have people sitting on the bench, but towards the public street. In terms of the traffic circulation, traffic flow, we have been working with the applicant and the engineering department on resolving a series of elements for the circulation of the project. And the applicant is implementing strategies to mitigate the impact that the traffic circulation is going to generate on the public realm. They're reducing the curb cuts as much as possible, as it was demonstrated by the variance that they're requesting on the drive-through. and they are providing streetscape around the entire site with trees and landscape. The curb cuts are also being proposed with some pavers to highlight the crossing to the pedestrians, and also they will be maintained at the same grade than the sidewalk. Staff is recommending one condition for this, and is the installation of a pedestrian warning smart sign outside the Dixie Highway driveway to warn pedestrians that a car is coming from the inside of the parking garage. So based on these analysis and regarding the special review, staff recommends approval based on the finding that the petition meets the standards as indicated by section 9454B2, and we're recommending the following conditions. A, the appropriate trellis system shall be installed on the east-facing garage wall to support the adequate growth of the proposed vine. The applicant shall submit a maintenance plan specifying the area to be covered and how the vine is to be maintained within the area. And the maintenance plan will be part of the site plan approval. B, applicant shall implement a pedestrian warning smart sign outside the Dixie Highway driveway to alert pedestrians that a car is coming out of the driveway. C, at least one of the proposed benches within the public open space shall be oriented towards the sidewalk. And D, the surface parking lot shall be adjusted to maintain the minimum setback area clear of any parking associated element. This condition D is being struck by staff, as it has been determined that the surface parking actually meets the setback based on the new curb cut configuration of the new curb line established by the streetscape being improved on Banyan Boulevard. So staff is removing the D, the condition D. And then based again on the staff recommendations for the variance, staff is recommending the following conditions. Applicant shall ensure the execution of the parking garage facade articulation reflects the details indicated in the rendering presented as part of the DAC submittal in terms of material, color variations, number of elements, etc. The suspended paver system shall be implemented within the public open space to ensure the proposed trees grow to its full potential. The true root growth area shall be minimum 10 feet around the tree trunk. And C, the paver area proposed at the two driveways along Banyan Boulevard shall be extended to the 16 feet setback line. That concludes the staff presentation. Roger, we are not hearing you. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry, we're back. You got me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice, succinct summary. Appreciate your explanation of the variance requests, and same to Rob and Keith. Nice, thorough presentation of the project. It's very interesting. Looks very successful. I suppose, John Roach, should we go see if we have any public commentary before we have our questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, according to my records, there has been no public comment or anybody wishing to speak. So you should be able to continue on.
Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public discussion. We'll open it up for the board to ask questions of either the staff or the applicant. And whatever the protocol is, we would take those questions now.
Mr. Chair, please be aware that Mr. Gregory Gabriel has entered the meeting. He's probably been on for almost an hour now.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff.
Yeah, oh, please, go ahead.
Okay.
Yes,
Anna Maria, I got a quick question regarding the site plan and the site data for the parking. Can you walk me through the parking calculations in terms of the projects being viewed kind of, as the whole site, including the Wells Fargo Bank building, and but when you look at the parking calculations, it's showing the parking for the existing office building, which I'm assuming is the 44,000 square foot bank, as 7 parking spaces. And I'm trying to understand what, how the calculations work. Is there going to be enough parking, globally for the site? And then the site plan shows like a future subdivision line, and it looks like the 9 compact spaces, the 8 spaces and 1 handicap space are going to end up on the bank side. So what's happening with parking today, and what's the potential for the future if they do subdivide?
Yes, that's a good question. What we did with this project is we researched the history of the building, and it was determined that the Wells Fargo building, we're calling it the Wells Fargo, but it was not Wells Fargo from the beginning, was built without parking. So the parking lot is not really tied to the existing office building. So they will not have to replace the parking as the parking that was or is currently being used by the office building. So the applicant in this case had to only comply with the parking for the new building. They chose to comply not only with the parking for the new building, but they have additional parking that they are providing according with their contractual agreement with Wells Fargo for the Wells Fargo and the public. But the building will not provide parking as you got, is not gonna meet code requirements for the 44,000 square feet office building. So the way we see it is basically an urban environment. Probably the building will end up doing some type of agreements with some of the tenants for the existing building, but the tenants for those buildings currently have just leasing the spaces from that surface parking lot is not, so they will have to find parking on the surrounding parking garages. And maybe the applicant has more to say about the details of that, but that's the way it's working in terms of code. So they only have to comply with the requirements for the new building.
Are the 7 spaces for the existing office building, are those in the garage? Or
the what? I'm sorry?
Are those in the site data, it says parking for existing office building 7. Are those 7 spaces in the garage, or are they surface, or are they on the street? Where are those 7 spaces?
I believe those are the surface parking spaces.
Anna Maria, may I kind of add to what you've said?
Sure.
So like Anna Maria mentioned, the 7 requirement in the site data was based on historical review of the site. It was previously occupied by another building where the current parking lot is today. And then calculated based on existing parking spaces to the north side of this office building. Those particular spaces are going to remain in place. They don't meet today's parking code requirements, so they don't count towards the provided parking number. The applicant has come to an agreement with the tenant to lease or provide 60 parking spaces within the parking structure that we are constructing to be allocated toward the office building, as well as, sorry, I'm misspeaking, 60 total, which I believe include the 9 parking spaces we are providing in the surface lot between the 2 buildings. So there will be parking provided based on a lease agreement with the existing owner and tenant.
So in the future, when the property subdivides, those 9 go over to the bank building, and they have whatever remaining agreement in the garage, whatever that difference is, whatever the delta is from the 60?
Correct. There will be a cross-access agreement between the 2 parties over the entire site to allow that access and the use of the parking tied to that agreement.
Thank you.
But again, to clarify, it's not a requirement of the building. It's like they are choosing to do those additional parking spaces. So they are not required to comply, except the ones that, the 7 that Robert mentioned that were part of it.
Correct. Yep. The provided within the parking structure covers the required parking also associated with the residential and the retail portion of our
And I understand that. I think, but from a functional standpoint, you got a 44,000 square foot building, it needs parking. And I mean, so arrangements have to be made somewhere because people have got to, just between staff or employees and visitors, there's got to be parking. So obviously it's been worked out in horse trading between the residential and possibly offsite, I'm assuming, just based on wherever they can find it.
Yeah, hey, Brian, this is Keith Spina. So there is a formal agreement. If the property closes, the building will continue forever to own 60 parking spaces, 9 on grade and 41 in the garage. 51, sorry. So we agree completely with what you're saying. Anna Maria pointed out the obvious, which it's not required by code, but it is part of the purchase agreement.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else have questions for staff or the applicant? Nick, you there?
Nick has conflict.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry.
No
Michael,
problem.
Michael, David, anyone?
I don't have any specific questions. It looks like a great project. I mean, it looks like one of the nicest buildings, whether condo or apartment buildings, brought through our committee in quite some time. So I'm really excited. It looks like they've worked with staff and really come up with a lot of great solutions. I don't have any issues with the variances. You know, I agree with all staff recommendations. The parking garage really is creative, and I'm excited to see any further renderings on that. But what they've come up with so far looks looks fantastic. I guess I just have one question. I actually had an extended little out of town weekend, so I didn't really get a chance to look at the packet. So I guess maybe two questions. The northwest corner of the building, I think it was somewhere around slide 40. The renderings that were provided, there's kind of a blank vertical stack on the northwest corner. A little bit further east, there's kind of a vertical, looks like a window that goes throughout the entire building. Why is that, I guess, a blank stack? Is that part of the, maybe a stairwell? It just
Yes,
looks a
that's
little.
correct, Michael. It is the stairwell in the building. And one of the things that we did work closely with staff on is the location. We rearranged some apartment floor plans that are on the eastern side of that north wall so that we could get a window in that broke it up. We also have pretty nice articulation in the massing of the building, and that has a lot of relief. And although in elevation, it looks like there's a blank wall, we think in reality, that's why we showed some of the views coming down Dixie. We also, not that it matters, but it's also, we think, much greater articulation than a lot of the buildings in downtown. And working with staff, we agreed it needed to be. And so, yeah, but there is a stairwell at that end of the building.
Okay, so there couldn't be any kind of window or anything additional. I mean, no, I think the building looks fantastic. I mean, it's a fantastic project. I like everything that you've done as far as stepping the building down towards the existing Wells Fargo building. I used to bank there, so I used to go there all the time and very familiar with that site. The public open space connecting to the lobby, everything you guys have done is really fantastic. I didn't, again, since I didn't look at the packet, what is the parking ratio to the apartments? You have 233 apartments. How many parking spaces are there total?
It's just below 1.2.
Okay.
And, Todd and Jason are experts in apartments, not only around the country, but as the owner of Oversea here as well, and studied the market. And we think it's a really good ratio.
Yep. I think that is sounds like a fair number. And then last question, since I used to ride my bike and park at the Wells Fargo when I would go inside and banking there, there's no bike racks whatsoever. So I'm just curious where the bike racks going to be located, how many of them are we, just, I guess, ballpark, you're going to have 10 spaces for bikes, 20. I'm sure there's a certain requirement by the city.
The requirement for public bike racks, they are required to provide 8 parking spaces, bike rack parking spaces. So 2 are going to be located on the north side of the retail, right around the corner, and 2 are going to be located close to the bus stop by the lobby area.
Okay, so there'll be 8 total, and there'll be 2 separate racks there, one on the north side by the retail,
and then two additional by the public open space.
Okay.
Rob, Robert, I don't think there are any on the Olive side, correct?
Correct. Would you like me to pull up a site plan and show you, or was that explanation adequate?
Yeah, no, that's adequate. I'm curious, is there any on the other side where Oversea was just built either?
On the Oversea, they're gonna be 4 bike racks on the Oversea side. So on the east side of Olive, there are 4 bike racks closer to the corner. But
Okay.
we're not proposing, this project is not proposing any on their side, on
Okay.
Olive.
No, that's fine. It sounds like there's a substantial, I mean, that's substantially more than there is today. There is currently 0, I think, on that whole block. So that sounds good. But no, I think it looks like a fantastic project, and the developer and city staff have worked together to make another, much more activated site than we have there now, and it looks great. So congratulations.
Thanks, Michael. David or Brad, any comments?
No comments on my end. Thank you. It's a very nice project.
Agreed. No comments here.
Okay, who else is out there on the board? Gregory?
Yeah, I have no comments. Actually, Michael bring up the question I would have asked about the bicycle, so I have no further comments.
Okay, I think we covered everyone on the board. Yeah, I agree. It looks like a very successful project. Both to the landscape team and the architects. I really like what you did with the public space. The garage facade seems very successful. If we could pull up some of those elevations and just talk about a few things, I think that Michael touched on, either the west facade. Rob, are you able to bring up your screen again?
Yeah, I'm working on pulling it up right now.
Sure. I think, Michael, you touched on it. The biggest challenge with these buildings for the design team is, how do you avoid 15 stories of extruded stucco and balconies and glass and have it be successful?
You want the elevations, or you want the architectural renderings?
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, why don't you try to pull up the view study that we did driving south on Dixie? It wasn't the final renderings of the building, but it really shows what we had worked with city staff on to help relieve what was just mentioned.
I think it's one of your first slides. It was that perspective line sketch.
Yep.
Looking to the southeast.
Yep. Okay. Sorry, guys.
That's
It's right after the floor plans, Rob, right after the building section.
Yeah, there you go.
So
I think what Michael was touching on, was exactly that. Is what do you do with a 10-story elevator shaft or trash enclosure other than painted stucco? I think that certainly could use some restudy, especially seeing that, you did identify it as a major component, as a visual anchor to the building driving in south on Dixie. And I understand, the attempt with the horizontal lines at the base of the building, the cantilevered balconies. Again, in general, I just think there could be a little additional study done on some of these massive vertical components of the building. But go ahead and continue around to that next slide. I think you had the views over on, yeah. And then I think Mr. Spina mentioned also, that the nature of trying to create an iconic component to this building to have a memory point, as it were. So I think what you guys have done on these corner components with the skewed balconies, the vertical extension of that corner element is very successful. Again, it's that extrusion and the run-on of all the floor plates going top to bottom that always seem to be the challenge with these structures. So, they don't wind up being repetitive masses of stucco and glass. But I think, this is a real good start, similar to what you did at the Overseas building with the eyebrows as the cap of the building and some different articulation at the base of the building. Again, it's hard to tell exactly a lot of the details on the ground level on the west and the south side. if you continue around to that, your southeast corner, I think probably the most successful component of the building, is this area at the garage structure and what you've done with that facade, and the amount of energy you placed into that component of the building is very successful. It does seem quite a bit of an anomaly to the rest of the project, and maybe that's intentional. And I don't know if it's worth studying how that tectonic and material and color palette could be integrated into, I think, what was described as the base of the building, the first 5 stories, to integrate the 2 structures, or again, if that was the intent, to have these completely separate components and read that way. I think that park, what you guys did with the integration of the park and the public open space and the integration to the foyer is really extremely well done. And hopefully those shade trees don't end up growing and getting so large that it obscures such a nice part of the architecture, but I guess that will happen in time. Yeah, for the most part, I think you guys did a really nice job. Again, maybe a little bit of study in some of those particular areas, but yeah, it's nice work. I don't have any further comments. No problems at all with any of the variance requests. I think you guys did a great job working diligently with staff to vet all those out. So I don't have any questions or any issues with that. And I think—
Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
Yep, you have a motion to approve?
Mr. Johnson, are you gonna add any of those 2 comments as conditions on your proposal?
I mean, it's sort of like we've done in the past. They're just observations and recommendations and suggestions. So I'll leave that to you and the applicant to see if you want to require any further restudy of any of those components, I guess in particular that northwest corner.
And we'll need 2 motions, one for the special review and a second for the variances.
Yes.
Okay, Brian, you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, motion to approve the special request and motion to approve granting of the variance.
Brian, you will need to read the motion as is included in the staff report, please, with all the conditions.
Doesn't someone have to second it?
I second it.
I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the special review for DAC case number 20-03 as listed in the staff report dated May 13, 2020. The following conditions are recommended. A, an appropriate trellis system shall be installed on the east facade garage wall to support the adequate growth of the proposed vine. The applicant shall submit a maintenance plan specifying the area to be covered and how the vine is to be maintained within that area. The maintenance plan will be part of the site plan approval. B, applicant shall implement a pedestrian warning smart sign outside the Dixie Highway driveway to alert pedestrians that a car is coming out of the driveway. C, at least one of the proposed benches within the public open space shall be oriented towards the sidewalk. And D, surface parking lot shall be adjusted to maintain the minimum setback area clear of any parking associated elements. The motion is based on a determination that—
I'm sorry, then the condition number D is the one that the staff removed.
Right, strike condition D. The motion is based upon a determination that the testimony presented at this hearing along with the application submitted constitute a preponderance of competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that the special review requested satisfies all of the criteria of the City of West Palm Beach zoning and land development regulations, Article 2, Section 94-52, parens B, parens 2.
I second.
Yep, motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, now that motion carries.
Do I have to make it a second motion for the variance, Anne Marie?
Yep.
Yes, please.
Motion to approve granting the variances?
Yep.
I second it.
Do those need to be read in, Anna Maria?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I move that the Downtown Action Committee approve the variance requests included in DAC case number 20-03 as follows. 1, a variance from table 4-49 to reduce the minimum active use required along Dixie Highway from 86.1 feet, 60% to 47.5 feet, 47.5%. 2, a variance from table 4-49 to reduce the minimum active use required along Banyan Boulevard from 367 feet, 80% to 313 feet, 68%. 3, a variance from table 4-7 to reduce the minimum active use abutment for a public open space from 49.5 feet, 25% to 34.2 feet, 17.3%. 4, a variance from section 94-111, parens O, parens 3, to increase the maximum width of curb cuts from 25 feet to 30.8 feet. This variance approval is made conditional upon the restrictions, stipulations, and/or safeguards listed in the Planning Division staff report dated May 13th, 2020, that I move are necessary to ensure compliance with the purpose and intent of the zoning code and consistent with the downtown master plan and the comprehensive plan of the city of West Palm Beach as follows. A, applicant shall ensure that the execution of the parking garage facade articulation reflects the details indicated in the renderings presented as part of that case submittal in terms of materials, color variations, number of elements provided, and other. B, a suspended paver system shall be implemented within the public open space to ensure the proposed trees grow to its full potential. Tree root growth area shall be a minimum of 10 feet around tree trunk. C, paver area proposed at the 2 driveways along Banyan Boulevard shall be extended to the 16 feet setback line. This motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted, which constitutes competent substantial evidence that the standards in section 94-38, parens D, parens 6 have been met.
Okay, motion, was there a second?
I second.
Okay, there we go. Any other discussion on that? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations. Good luck with the project, guys. Okay, Anna Maria, I think that was it for today. Are there any further business or unfinished business?
No, I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else like to add anything before we adjourn this meeting? Okay. Seeing none, we'll adjourn today's meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to all.